No, San Diego, California.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so you're
Yeah.
mostly south. Okay, you're much further south.
And
No,
tell us
we're
where you're from.
mostly
Where you
LA,
at?
and then we have guests. We have friends of the society.
Oh,
Friends
good.
from
Okay,
afar.
great. So your common ground is the whiskey, but you draw people from, well, mainly Southern California.
Yeah,
That's cool.
we're mostly LA, but oh, great.
Great.
Yeah.
So I think we're waiting for Anna. Is Anna?
She's here.
Hi,
She
Phil.
just messaged
For a
me.
while.
Hi. How are you?
I am fabulous. How are you?
Nice to meet you virtually.
I know.
I've heard a lot about you. You've been working with Sash and getting everything set. Well, this is great. I'm going to try and play second fiddle to you for this event. So, but tell me, I don't want to. I tend to go on. I tend to talk a lot sometimes. So, if I'm talking too much, can you please tell me to stop?
If everyone else wishes it so, then yes.
Well, we do like, Phil, we do like the deep dives. We do like you when you
Exactly.
people geek out a little bit. We really enjoy the history. As much as you want to provide,
Great.
we're not going to stop you. We don't have any time limits.
Great.
We're here. We'll dedicate a couple hours easy.
Great.
We'll have you
I
for as long as you'll have us.
Great. Well, I think what we usually try and do is make this an hour so that we don't fatigue people with our things we're talking about. But I'll go as deep a dive. Oh, there's a doggy. I'll go as deep down the rabbit hole as you guys want. I'm happy to share how we got. I'm happy to share whatever. And but as I said, Anna, if I'm running off and I'm speaking too much, can you please tell me to stop talking or mute me?
So on that note, I think we have a majority here, and people will trickle in as it's Friday night. People are kind of getting situated, getting home from work. So I'll do the introductions, and then we'll pass it on and kind of get into the flow of things. So we are excited tonight to welcome a brand that I've been following on social media for, I guess, a year now. Wanderback has a really interesting bottle design and a really interesting story. So I'm really excited to learn more about it here today. I know most of us were not able to get batch one because it arrived Wednesday night. So thank you to the retailer who sent it to us with the slowest shipping possible. I made it clear we needed it urgently. They sent me an email saying it'll be there in 7 days. I said, thank you. Wasn't going to piss them off. I wanted to make sure they at least sent it at that point. So I know some of us have a sample, those who were able to stop by last night. So make sure to show that off and rub it in people's faces. The rest of you, if you want a sample, I will get you one later. I promise. I have plenty. But on that note, from the Los Angeles Bourbon and Whiskey Society, my name is Vadim. We want to welcome Wanderback. Today we have Phil from the brand. Phil, you're the distillery manager?
No, I'm actually the founder. I founded the business 6-7 years ago, and I own the company. And so, yeah,
You're Phil. Oh, wow. I was not aware we would have the honor of having you join us today. I'm honored. Thank you so much for being here.
No. The honor is mine. I'm glad you are interested. I don't always do these things, and Anna is I think Anna's going to drive the bus here this evening. But I'll as I said to Anna, I can run off at the mouth with these things, so I've asked her to tell me to not talk if I'm talking too much.
No, but keep the information coming. We love it.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to see you guys, and I know we're in different places and different circumstances. I mean, we're all sharing the same crazy world right now. That's for sure. But this is quite a nice thing.
Sharing the same whiskey tonight. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. It's quite nice. This is quite a nice thing to talk about whiskey, and whiskey is one of those subjects that there's no politics involved, and there's nothing. There's generally nothing bad unless you drink too much of it, I suppose. But this is a really nice thing to talk about and a reason to get together tonight.
Absolutely. So every one of our tastings, we like to start off with a few words from our founder, David Donahue. So David, you want to say something?
Thank you very much, Vadim. As he said, Phil and Anna, we're really excited that you both are here to kind of share a little bit about the brand and what you guys are doing and where you're going to go. We're really excited to have this opportunity. One of the benefits of COVID is that we've been able to explore and really dive deep into these immersive experiences. You know, it's the closest we're going to get to being there with you at your location or you with us. So welcome, and we're really looking forward to this.
Thank you,
Thank
David.
Great.
you.
So for all the regulars, welcome back. For anyone who's new, thank you very much for joining us tonight. We are excited to bring yet another wonderful brand to your attention. Yeah, you may know by now that one of my favorite things with this, with the virtual tastings, is introducing a brand you may have not heard of before or had an opportunity to try, and bring it to your attention and give you that chance to discover something new, something wonderful. And I think we've done that every time fairly well. To Jordan's question about the order, I'm going to let you guess that one for this.
Say
The
it
order
again?
is going to be pretty obvious on
Yes.
this one.
Maybe not.
No,
There is
we're
an
not
order.
doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4.
No.
Ooh,
Well,
okay.
Is it?
Well
Yeah,
then,
1, 3, 2, 4. I was just told about this as well, and yeah, it's good. I'll tell you that. So sorry, Anna, did you want to go ahead, or would you like me to go on?
I'll start, and
Great.
then I have plenty of questions also to throw to you to answer, because obviously you are the pro on all the process and the mash bill and this stuff that's like super specific to Wanderback. So I'll start off real quick. Yes, so the order is going to be 1, 3, 2, 4. And there is a good reason for it. You can do it chronologically, of course. However, the taste, it's really a fun way to try it this way. So what I would recommend, yes, Chadwick, I would say pre-pour, please. You guys are great. You're totally on the ball. I've pre-poured my own. So I would also recommend you do the same. I would also ask, while it can be very tempting, to save just a little bit as we go along, so you have something at the end for comparative tasting. I don't know about you guys, but when I go to tastings like this, I like to have a little bit just to come back to it later after it's done a little bit more breathing and after I've gone through the whole thing, and then I can always pick up more notes at the end. So I'll just introduce myself. Yes.
Sorry, Anna, can I just give a little suggestion? I would encourage you all. I know you're in a very hot part of the earth right now, and it's hot outside. Hopefully you're in AC or you have a fan. But I would encourage you to pour your glass, your samples neat. You could add a bit of water. We'll talk about some. I mean, you know, if you feel strongly, you should definitely drink the whiskey exactly as you want it. But I would encourage you to drink it neat initially, or with some nice tasting water, and then have a glass of cold water, ice water, or even ice water with some lemon or lime in it on the side. And you could cool the whiskey down if it's really warm, because you're in a warm place. Put a cooling stone or something, put it in a cool glass. But I think this whiskey tastes better neat, and I find most whiskeys taste better neat, but with some water on the side. So I would encourage you to do that.
I would also say just a little bit of Zoom etiquette before we jump in here. I can see a bunch of you are on mute, and that's great. If you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, please feel free to do so. You can put it in the chat as well. I'll try to keep up on that too, but if I miss a question, just give a shout. This is, you know, informational, but we also want you guys just to have a good time. You know, we're just your humble guides here on a happy hour after a week. So happy Friday, everyone. So after you've done your pre-pour, which I think everyone is probably done now, I just wanted to share my screen. Some great pictures so you have a better idea even more of what Wanderback is all about. So there we are.
I tried to do that for the ones that I had to do for the Santa, and I always failed. So congratulations. It looks amazing.
Thank you. Been practicing all afternoon. All right. So as I said, So we're going to start with the tasting here. And I don't think, given how much all of you are enthusiasts and connoisseurs, you don't really need me to talk too much about tasting tips or anything. I think you guys probably know how to do that. But I would say that we do have, you know, just a few things that we'd like to share just as tools. So many of you probably use a tasting wheel. I do when I do tasting. We have one that we like to use here that Phil used when he studied at Harriet Watt. So it was designed for single malt Scotch, which is, you know, as you know, a little different than American single malt, but it's a really great tool and a great place to start. Another tool we like to use.
If you could share that with me afterwards, I'll be happy to post that in the society page, because I think you're the first ones to bring that to us. I know I've used this before myself. You're actually, after what, 3 dozen tastings, David, right? This is the first time we've had a flavor wheel shown up.
Oh,
So,
wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we, you know, so as you were saying, Anna, this is the one that I used when we were in Scotland and at Harriet Watt. But there are different ones. I like this one because I think it's for a few reasons. It talks about mouthfeel, it talks about taste, but your nose is where you really sense all these things, and your nose has many more things that it perceives compared to your taste buds. So you can use different flavor wheels. I just think this is a nice way of jogging the mind because, you know, if you all are whiskey appreciators, and you may have done something like this before, but it's sometimes very difficult to know or to put into words what you're nosing or tasting. And so this is just a way of jogging your mind and it's just helping you think of certain things and make certain connections with, you know, things you've experienced, tastes that or smells that you've had in the past. So there are many different flavor wheels. This is just one that we like.
David, did you have something you wanted to say?
I did, Anna. Thank you very much. If you could if you want to use the flavor, this wheel, and kind of demonstrate how you and Phil use it or implement it as you're kind of going along, I think that would be valuable for me. I'd really appreciate it. I've seen these, I've heard about these, but personally, I've not gone through the process. I mean, I have one of the other board of directors and founders, James Gates. He and I went back to Louisville, Kentucky, and did the Stave and Thief Executive, Stewardship Program. So we did that, but spending a little bit more time on these kind of processes, I think, would be a lot of fun if it doesn't take too much time.
Well, the time is yours. So happy to go over them. I would say that this one, I've used a number of different tasting wheels, like I said. What's helpful for me, and I could ask Phil to talk about this one specifically, I can talk about the next one. Just a quick note, I did put a link in the chat that goes to our website, and that has some tasting tips as well as the wheel and this tasting square as well. So you have options if you want to have that up on your screen while we're tasting to just kind of jog some thoughts and memories as we're going along.
So
Phil, do you want to touch on this one?
Yeah, I can. I can barely see it, and I'm just turned 50 this year, so now my bloody eyes they're doing those funny things where I have to make things farther away.
You don't have it memorized?
I don't have this memorized. So the way that I think about this, so taste is different for everyone, and I'm not as to be quite honest with you, I don't see flavors as well as some people do. Like, recall the various things that we're smelling. But what I see, so the way that I look at this, the reason why I like this is the taste of whiskey comes from some key things. The malt that's used is the first thing, and the yeast is as well. But the malt is a big thing, and there are some flavors that are associated with that malt, bready, malty type flavors, and then you have the barrel effect. So it sits in a barrel, and barrel creates many different flavors that are different than the malts, the caramels, the vanillas, and these sorts of things. Now the malt may also, and in our case it does, we'll talk about this with some of these, especially batch one, gives it the phenols, the smoky flavors, which are very strong for some people, and they're not for everybody. There are some people that, you know, typically that don't like smoky taste. We do. We don't want to be too smoky, but anyway, so there's a class of the phenolic type smells that you will perceive. So those are the main ones, and then within that within those flavors, then you have separate things like mouthfeel. Mouthfeel is a big thing that we think about with whiskey. So how it coats your mouth. Does it feel thin, or does it feel thicker or more oily? So yeah, I don't think we need to go through all the specific, but so
Okay.
what I would ask you to do is look at this. So it starts flavor by the mouth. These are the sweet, salty, umami type flavors. There aren't very many. Then you have the aromas, which encompass a ton, you can see there a ton. And try to think about, as I was saying, where those flavors may be originating. The cereals, those would be the malts. The greeny grassy, those would be the malts. The estery, that would typically be from the yeast. The esters are typically created by the yeast. Sweet can be from many things. Sweet can be from the malts. There's a malty sweetness. Barrels create a ton of sweetness, especially in our whiskey and the typical American bourbons. The sweetness comes a lot from the cask. And then the sulfury and these sorts of things. These are more from the malts typically. So yeah, does that help, Anna?
I would say so. Just as sort of a logistical usage, the inside of the wheel is the more basic flavors. So if you're trying to figure out, oh, okay, this is kind of floral, and I'm trying to figure out what kind of floral, and then you can kind of look at that cue out and decide and get more refined as you go along. So this is, it's a really useful tool. It's helpful when you just need to describe things. Of course, it's a little tricky to read on the screen, and it is quite small, as we said. So we also have this one, which is a little more linear. It doesn't have quite the detail, but again, this is one that's created a little more for American single malt and for Wanderback. So this, if you need something that's a little more simplified for just ease of use, here's another option. So again, you can pull those up from the link just so we have something. But I think we're going along here, and we haven't had, well, some of you are drinking whiskey, so that's great. I haven't had any yet though, so.
Do you guys use the chart and the wheel when making the spirits, or do you use it for this purpose when other people are enjoying it, or if you guys use it when making it, how do you use it?
So it's for things like this, you know, it's for the final product typically. It's a good question, you know. So when we set out to make this whiskey, or when anyone sets out to make a whiskey, it's amazing the variables that the levers you can pull to create taste. We make an American single malt, so my background, and I'm going to go a little bit into let me go into my background and sort of how this began.
Can we pause just for 1 second though?
Yeah.
And how many, by account, I can't quite see anybody, how many people actually do have batch number 1? Is there, so Vadim, anyone else? I can't see everybody.
There's a couple, and I'd say it's a majority do not.
Okay. I really would.
Cheers,
like
everybody. I'm going to have a sip. Can everybody else have a little sip?
Have a sip of whatever it is you have.
Whatever, yeah. Have a sip of something, and then Phil, please go ahead, and yeah, we'll come back to some of the other stuff later.
So I'm from Eastern Canada. I moved to the Northwest almost 20 years ago, and it was an interesting time. You know, Canadians were making better beer at that time. I remember seeing how the American beers started to really come on, and I started to love them. Some of the West Coast IPAs. My friends were introducing me to American bourbon and rye, and I liked them, but I came from a background in Canada where my father liked Canadian rye and some of the Highland Scotches, nothing very fancy, but you know, he had a taste, and I did appreciate that. And so over that time, I started to see tastes and think about taste. I started cooking as well, and I wanted to make, you know, good food. And then I started tasting some different whiskeys that I liked, some that I didn't as well. But there was this new category that happened many years ago. Companies like Stranahan's and there were others as well, and St. George's, and they were making some, and then Balcones, and I tasted these whiskeys, and I thought, my goodness, this is different, and I really, really liked some of them. And I just started investigating, and it turned out that these were American single malts. I'll never forget the first time I tasted Stranahan's. I was in Boulder, Colorado at a buddy's place, and I never tasted anything that good. And when I started talking and thinking about it and reading and then making phone calls and so on, it turned out it was a malt whiskey made with malted barley. I assume that you folks know what whiskey is. Whiskey is a spirit made with grain aged in a barrel. And there are different types of whiskey, obviously, bourbon, rye, and then there's a Scotches and Irish and American single malt. And the basic difference, bourbon is made mainly with corn, and rye is made mainly with rye. And malt whiskey, our malt whiskey, is made with just 100% malted barley. You know, rye and wheat and barley are very similar grains. Barley can grow anywhere, really, lots of places in the world. And the difference is that we take that barley and we malt it. Malting is where you let the grain start to sprout, and then you stop it and you dry it, and then you use it to make beer and whiskey. So I tasted these whiskeys and I thought, my goodness, that is good stuff. And I started to do some thinking and reading and whatever. And then we had this farm here in Hood River, Oregon. So we're in the Pacific Northwest, we're on the Columbia River. I'm literally sitting here right now. I know you're all in some serious heat there in LA, but I'm sitting here and it's clear now. There's not much smoke. There's a bit of high atmosphere smoke, but it's pretty clear. I can see Mount Adams from where I'm sitting right here, and it's amazing. It's a really nice spot. And it turned out that this area, we had this big burn, a couple of burns, and this area, you know, acreage, whatever, and there were cherries here, and I tried to make a go of that, and it was kind of frustrating. And then it turned out that we could grow barley here. And I started thinking, and mainly talking to my wife and seeing if I could maybe think about doing this. And she thought it was a reasonable idea. So I started the process to get permission to do it. And lo and behold, we got permission to make a distillery here. And so that's how we got started. I'll pause there, and you should go ahead. But that's the reason why we started, and I'll go more into how we made our whiskey and how it's made and what makes it unique and so on in a minute if you'd like. But Anna, maybe, and again, yeah. Anna, like I said to you before, please, when I start to run off, you have to tell me to stop talking because I'll talk all night.
Oh, this will be fun. So if you have batch 1, I'm just going to touch on that real quick before we move on to batch 3 and get into some of the nitty-gritty details that I know you want, because I'm that person too who always wants to know all the nerdy stuff. So batch 1, if you have it, it's 3 years old, 45% ABV, and it's matured in all new American oak casks. And this is where all of our whiskey starts. It all starts here, and then we play with the maturation in different barrels after. So I feel like this is a really great place to understand like Wanderback character, because it's kind of the original, you know. So if you have that, I'd love to hear if anyone has any tasting notes for that. Otherwise, we can move ahead to one that everyone has.
If I could maybe just add a little bit just to begin with. So this is a big whiskey. Batch 1 is a big whiskey. I know this is a bourbon whiskey society, so you folks aren't afraid of a big whiskey. But this is a big tasting whiskey. It's not too strong. I think it shouldn't. You'll get some alcohol burn, but not as much. It's a big taste, and so don't be afraid to add a bit of water. Have a bit of water next to it. you know, I sometimes start people on batch 3 or 2 to begin with, because those are easier. Those are more entry level whiskeys of ours. But batch 1 is a biggie, so go slow. I can tell you now.
And I can say that if it's something where you save it till the end of a tasting after you've had some additional of the other batches, it really, the kind of smoky char really comes through more if you have it after some of the other whiskeys, which I found really interesting for myself when I was trying it. But otherwise it has this, you know, cocoa, kind of dark fruits a little bit, some baking spices, and oak. Yes, Phil? You had something else?
Yeah, so this whiskey, so I'll tell you the story of this whiskey, and this is, it's the same beginning of all the whiskeys you have in front of you now, batch 1 to 4. So this whiskey is made with, again, malted barley, 100%. It's made mainly with pale malt. So pale malt is made, like I was saying, so you take a grain that looks like wheat or rye in the seed, and you basically soak it in warm water, big vats typically. And it begins to sprout. So there's a root, and then a vine, a leaf coming out the top, and a root coming out the bottom. And after some time, after a few days, you stop that process by drying it, and you knock those green parts off the seed, and that's malt. And malt, if you crush it and you add warm water to it again and some yeast, is magical, because it makes alcohol and a bunch of flavors. And so we used mainly pale malt, almost 90%, but then, which makes, and that's basically how Scotch and Scotch and Irish are made, and Japanese as well, whiskey. But we added just over 10% specialty malt. So specialty malt is that same malt that I was talking about earlier, heated further. So you can heat it a lot or not so much, and it creates more flavors. Maillard reactions happen, you get more flavors. And one of the interesting specialty malts that we use in our whiskey is called chocolate malt. And chocolate malt, for some of you who like beer, is a special malt that gives stout its color and taste, some of the brown ales as well. Very, very flavorful and smoky. It's basically a malt that's really heated. A lot of energy is added to it. And it's black almost. It's a very, very dark brown. And that is the source of some of the phenols, the smokiness that you taste. In a Scotch, and in some in some Irishes as well, the phenols, the smoke, comes from peated malt. So peated malt is that pale malt I was saying earlier that's basically in a room with smoke wafting through it from a peat, smoldering piece of peat, which is, carbon basically, or carbon, it's decaying trees or vines. But our smoke comes from a different place. It comes from that really darkly malted grain, this chocolate malt. And most people perceive that with batch 1. But what's interesting about smoke is that it dissipates over time. So, and as I said earlier too, smoke is not for everybody. I like smoke at times. Smoke is not for everybody. So as you get into the tastings of the other whiskeys now, which are basically batch 3, but older and aged in different casks, those smokes go away or start to dissipate. This was aged, so it was made. One of the interesting things about our distillery that's different from others is that we partner with malt whiskey producers across the U.S. to make our grain bill at their facility. And we oversee this and so on. And then we have the new make shipped back to Hood River, where we do the aging and the blending and the bottling. So we're working with a number of distilleries. And this one was made at Westland. We have whiskey that's coming out next year that's going to be made, that was made a few years ago at a different distillery in Texas that will remain unnamed for the time being. And then we've worked with so we're working with a number of distilleries. One of the things that I love going out and meeting these guys. One of the most fun parts of starting this business was the characters that I came across. Distillers. There's some of them. They're all interesting people. They all have a great story to tell, and they're really fun to work with. And so we work with them on making it. So this was all of these were made in the same distillery, but aged differently. So this batch 1 was aged in new American oak for most of its life. it spent a very short time, about 3 months, in a neutral cask, an ex-bourbon cask, which did not add much taste to it. Most of the taste and color comes from the new oak casks. But that time in the neutral cask, it allows the edges to soften a bit, and the oxidation reactions start to happen in that neutral cask. So that's how that batch 1 was made.
Great. Thank
I had
you.
one quick question, so, and I think Phil touched on that, because you were telling us all about distillation and all that, but yeah, I think you finished on that note, and I want to make sure that I didn't misrepresent. All 4 batches that we're tasting today were actually made at Westland, correct?
Yeah, so we make we made this at Westland. We were making others at different distilleries. We only make our whiskey in places that use pot stills. So again, I can go down this rabbit hole fairly far, but
Can you hang on to
So-
that thought for a second? We'll come back to that.
And the unnamed distillery that you mentioned in Texas, I'm pretty sure that's the barrel pick we did last night.
Oh,
That does
good.
single
So
malts out of Texas.
were they from a town that begins with W?
Yes, they were.
You'd be like, oh gosh.
Waco, Texas is a fairly famous place.
There's
Not
only 2
necess-
major distilleries in Texas that I can think of. So, and one of them makes
Yeah.
bourbon, one of them makes single malt.
Well, Waco, Balcones makes other things too. They make amazing things, and that is an interesting story. I don't know if I don't know if you met Jared Helmstead. He's an interesting dude, and he started that distillery with Chip Tate, who's a very interesting dude. He's no longer involved now, but I can tell you that part of the reason that going back to how we started, or why I started Wanderback, it was people like Chip Tate. I don't know if you guys have ever heard the story or read the story about Chip Tate. He's a very interesting guy, extremely intelligent. But the story of Balcones is like it pales in comparison to the story we're living through right now in this country. But it's an interesting story. I can tell you that much. Go online; it's all online, like most things, and it's you'll stay up late reading the story, like I did. Sorry, Anna, go ahead.
That's fine.
Interrupted. Please tell me, like I said, to not talk if I'm going.
Well, you're covering the topics I wanted to cover, so.
Oh, good.
There we go. So I was going to talk about what makes this really special, and it's the distiller collaborations, which we will come back to. But let's do batch 3.
Oh,
I
good.
really want to hear what you guys think about this. We really need to get to the drinking part. So batch 3, it's 5 years old, 45% ABV. It was matured in a high toast, low char, new American oak barrel, and then finished in French oak port casks. So if you think about the batch 1 that we just had that has some of those really particular characteristics of the baking spices and the oak, and a little bit of the char and the cocoa, and then now think about that with the port layered on top. So I could go on about what I taste in here, but I'd really love to hear from you all and what you're tasting in this bottle.
So give it a swirl, give it a light sniff, and you can if you take a little nose with your mouth slightly open and draw in through your mouth as well, you'll perceive more. And one of the things to add for Anna there, so like Anna was saying, this is the same grain bill as batch 1. This is the same stills, beautiful stills. This was same yeast as well. This started out life in new oak casks, and as Anna was saying, we use a cask unlike bourbon or typical rye that is heavily toasted and lightly charred. And basically what that means, so these are all full-size casks, 53 gallons. It's white American oak, mainly growing in the Ozarks. And so first you put this, you cut the wood, you cut it into pieces. We have we ask for wood that's been aged outside for 3 years. So aging makes a difference. If a wood is aged in a kiln, it happens very quickly, but it doesn't allow, if it sits outside, you have all the elements, all the various molds and things sitting on the wood, and it makes some magical things happen. And then if you take that and you make a barrel out of it, which is a very interesting process, you can heat it in different ways. So we choose to heavily toast our cask, which means we're heating it at a relatively lower temperature than charring would be done, but for a longer time. So it goes deeper into the deeper layers of the wood, the heat does. And then, but it's finished with a high level heat, which creates the char. You're not getting quite the alligator skin like you'd see on the inside of a bourbon cask, but you do get some char. And it creates some really nice tastes. And so we start off like that. But one of the things, Anne, I was gonna add to what you were saying, is this whiskey also spent a considerable time, over a year, in a very neutral cask, an ex-bourbon cask. And most scotches are aged in ex-bourbon casks, also ex-sherry casks, but mainly ex-bourbon casks. And they're wonderful things for aging whiskey in, but they don't add as much flavor. They don't add flavors quickly or color, which is why one of the reasons why Scotch needs to sit longer. The other reason is that Scotland, the temperature is on average lower than it is here in Oregon, and definitely California. And so things happen faster in the heat, as you can imagine. So we aged this whiskey for the middle part of its aging in a neutral bourbon cask. And so a cask is an amazing vessel. It can be made to be watertight, but air moves in and out. So especially during the warm parts of the year, air is moving in and out. Oxygen sits next to the liquid. And there are a lot of oxidative reactions that are happening that really do some great things. They round the edges, they mellow the whiskey. And then it spent a fairly short time in port wine. So when you put a spirit that has a higher ABV in a cask that had a liquid with a lower ABV or alcohol percentage, things mix. That whiskey or that spirit or that liquid that's sitting in the wood mixes with the whiskey that's a higher ABV very quickly. So the port tastes, they came in very quickly. So we had to be very careful not to have it sitting for too long, because I didn't want, somebody, I think Anna mentioned a layering of tastes. I think that's a nice way to think about whiskey, and looking at that wheel, I was trying to allude to that, but we're layering tastes from various things: malt, yeast, new casks, port wine casks. And that layering of flavors is, I think it's one of the things that makes whiskey so interesting, is there's so many layers. So anyways, yeah, that's batch 3. That's its story. So
I'm loving all of the notes that you guys are telling me. That's really great. I agree with all of them. And of course, there's no wrong answer. But yeah, coffee, it's definitely silky. The toasted coconut, I get some toasted pecan as well. There's like a little bit of nutty flavor and baking spices like throughout, along with this like dark stewed fruit. Almost not perfect for you guys right now, but here in the Pacific Northwest, it's great for like a rainy day.
But the stewed fruit, there are different sources of the stewed fruit. I think the port casks added some of that. The grain as well, I think, adds some of that. But this is a whiskey. I was really happy with this whiskey. I love batch 1 because that's our first, but it's a big whiskey. This is a more nuanced whiskey. And so anyways, I hope you like it.
May I ask, why are we doing 3 before 2? Is it because it's a lower proof?
Yeah, I'm not sure either, actually.
I can tell you. You can blame the order on me. It was my choice. But I think I like 1, having that one first if we had it, just so it was, we understand this is what Wanderback tastes like, and then we get to how we play with the maturation and what that has an effect on, for the flavor and the aging as well. And 3 is just a really nice, like, ease into it. Oh, this is a really smooth, silky, fruity, delicious, sweeter whiskey. And then we go into batch 2, and it is a higher ABV, but let's jump to batch 2 now, because this is a really great contrast. And I will say this one's my personal favorite of them, although batch 4 is like really close. So batch 2 for me is just a really wonderfully bright, contrasting. I'll skip ahead here. Um, it's such a contrast because it's so bright, because of the maturation in an ex-bourbon and ex-rum cask. And I just love what that brightness kind of lifts everything up into a different level.
So what do you, Vander, what do you mean by brightness? I'm curious to, what does that mean for you?
So for me, that means like the tropical fruits that are coming through. I get pineapple in here. I get
Nice.
like ginger, and then a little bit of the caramel and gingerbread, but a lot of orange marmalade, like those kind of spicy, lighter things. It's a little weird to say, but I always think about when I'm tasting whiskey, I think about them in terms of color. So it's almost like when I taste it, a color comes to mind, which isn't, not everybody would agree with this at all, but this is just how I taste. And for me, this one is like a bright, sunny yellow, where batch 3 is more of like a maroon kind of color. And that's just for the flavors. That's just for me. Everybody has a different thing. But so batch 2 is 4 years old.
Yeah, I love hearing that. So the yeah, it does different things for different people. I think also some of the lightness or brightness that you're describing, it has to do with the acidity as well. I think that certain people perceive the whiskey, the acidity of the whiskey in different ways. And I think this is, yeah, and I think color is a nice way to think about flavor, particularly of whiskey as well. So many people tell me that batch 3 is, you know, that's their Christmas cake type whiskey. You know, that reminds them of Christmas and the warmth of Christmas. And then, like you say, the brightness of batch 2 and some of the tropical fruit. That's great. That's really good. The history of this whiskey. So again, it started out the same as batch 1 and 3 that some of you have tasted. I'm from, I think I mentioned I'm from Eastern Canada, Newfoundland. So I come from a very maritime climate. And rum was something that we all liked in Newfoundland, still do, and I love some of the nicer rums, and so I thought that some of the some of the sharpness and the phenols and the smoke and the acidic things would be complemented by rum. Some of the things, the warmth and the sweetness of rum, and I found these amazing dark casks from this Nicaraguan distillery. They were almost black, and they had been aging rum for a long time. There was a lot of rum in these casks, and almost half of them, about a third of them, I couldn't get them to be watertight. I worked, I banged. This was back at the beginning of the distillery when I had maybe one person helping me, and so we aged in. So unlike the port that was used to finish batch 3, this sat in those rum casks for 6 to 9 months. Like, it evolved much more slowly. And rum has a similar ABV, obviously, to whiskey. So things happen more slowly. And so, but then I thought we got to a point where we were good, and I could perceive the nice things I wanted to, but not too much of the rum effect. And that's for this. And the reason I bottled this at a higher ABV is because I thought it could handle it. So, you know, basically what happens is you put whiskey in new make spirit, which comes off the still at varying amounts, but ours, we dilute down to 62 to 64% alcohol before we put it in the barrel. And we're going to release some barrel strength, but basically what you do is you dilute that. You do your blending and then you dilute, and you literally add water. And the other nice thing about where we are is we have this amazing water that runs off. Mount Hood is right behind me. So Mount Adams is north of me, and Mount Hood is south. And there's literally like 20 minutes down the road. And the water, it's a glacier. There's ice on there all year round. And water flows off that mountain. And that's what we use for drinking. And it's amazing water. It's really, we don't do anything to it. We just filter out any of the solids, but it's very great. It doesn't need to do, don't need to do anything to it. And the sweetness of that batch 2 that was created by the various things, but a lot to do with rum, I thought could handle a higher ABV. And that's why I bottled it at 100 proof. So it's strong. Be careful. Have a little sip, not too much. And that's the same. Be careful with batch 3. I think I saw a comment come across my screen there that somebody finished their batch 3. Batch 3 is a dangerous whiskey. You'll knock back a few fairly quickly. So take your time.
Speaking of the of just filtering out the beautiful Hood River water, I did want to say, if anyone is interested, we do not chill filter our whiskeys. We do not add any caramel coloring. So if that was something that someone was wondering about.
No,
I
and
wonder about that.
chill filtering is a funny one. I didn't want to take away any flavors, and basically to chill filter, most of the scotches we drink, all the bourbons and ryes, most of them are chill filtered. What you do is you cool the liquid down to a certain amount, where most of these long chain fatty acids come out of solution, and then you filter it and you take those out. And the good thing about that is it will clear some of the taste. You won't get the haze when you add ice. Like you'll notice, especially batch 1, or even none of the bottles that I can see have done it, but in a non-chill filtered whiskey sometimes, especially when it's cold, like when you add ice, it will become hazy, and it's those fatty acids that you would have filtered out if you had chill filtered it. The older whiskeys don't have that as much, but I'm thinking I might play with chill filtering. That might be kind of a taboo thing, but some people like to have that clear look to their whiskey when they add ice, but the reason we don't chill filter is it takes away some tastes and also some mouthfeel, and I think it's better this way. So I don't know how you all feel.
I like seeing David nod along. This is great.
I know, because Anna, no, chill filtering, I get it. I think that there's a lot of high-end scotches that do it, but I am not a fan. I think that you do remove that mouthfeel, and for example, if you're drinking something neat like Phil recommended, you can't get that with chill filtering. So
you can't. Yeah, and I think that's why I really do think that's why drinking this neat is better. You can put a cooling stone in there, but water. Sorry to interrupt you, David. Yeah.
Okay, so Phil, please stop apologizing. Please do not have to keep going to Anna and saying I'm interrupt me, because I'm sitting here loving every second of this, and I'm just like, if I could just do that and just go, oh, this is awesome, I would constantly. So we love it. I just chatted. I was like, I'm gonna get at least I don't have one, so
I'll get you a sample. I promise I'll get you a sample.
But I'm going to be getting the first 2 that we tried, because I'm like, oh snap! And this is what, no, these are really great. And one of the things that I'm very guilty of is Vadim has kind of gotten a little bit of a cult following when he does these things, where you're just like, oh, you might not have heard about it, but I'm going to give you a little bit of a taste, and then everybody's like, whoa, this is awesome. So I'm right there.
I'm really glad to hear you say that. I wanted to create a whiskey that I like, but also that people like. And I think if you're into taste, and if you're into good tasting things, and I'm really happy to hear you say that. I want to make a whiskey that people like. And that's excellent. That's great. It's and it's really fun to talk about them too, because so batch 2, like I said, it has a slightly different aging process. But what's crazy is if you have the ability to compare there, like batch 2 to 3 or 1 is almost running out. So I apologize. One of the other funny, things about us is we make these runs of whiskey, and when they're gone, they're gone. So we don't really plan to have a house blend, unlike, I guess, like some of the, bigger brands. So that's kind of good and bad. It's good because, some things are better to not last forever, but it's bad because when they're gone, and that's a bummer because, So anyways, that's that we do just runs of whiskey, and when they're gone, they're gone.
We love it. We love that. Yeah. So we have done a lot of DTs where that's the case. So Phil, we welcome it. We enjoy kind of going after the expressions and really being able to enjoy them for those moments, and just saying, hey, that was it.
There will be.
May I ask a question, Phil?
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
What's really interesting to me is that the 3 batches that I've tried so far have all been very different, right?
Isn't that
all
crazy?
Tasted very different. But you're saying that this is the same distillate, and it came off in the same season, same time, just different aging and a little bit of a different proof, right?
It's crazy. It blew my mind. Like I've been I learned how to do this by reading and going to visit people and tasting and eating nice food and nice wine and whatever, you know. So
Sounds
I
terrible.
thought these things, I thought, what's that?
Sounds terrible. Tasting,
Well, that's-
drinking, eating, drinking food. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the good stuff, man. And so I thought there would be a difference, and I thought that it would matter that there was a difference in the way we aged them. But it blew my mind when I saw what happened. You know, like you would taste those whiskeys. I mean, some people would go up to those whiskeys if they didn't know any better, and they would be like, they're not even the same whiskey. You know, these started out exactly the same, and the only difference was the last year or two, literally, or three. And it's crazy. And so it makes you realize that, you know, these things that we all, like us distillers, talk about, or these people like us who have these distillers, we talk about the effect of the barrel and time and age and climate. You know, I haven't talked about climate here much, but these things really matter. They make a difference. They make a difference in the taste. And when you know about it, when you hear about it, and you know the history, it matters sometimes. Maybe it doesn't other times, but yeah, it's crazy that these whiskeys started out exactly the same grain bill, the same water and yeast, the same stills, and the same beginning casks. But then the very end was changed, and the length of time they were in the casks changed.
So it's sort
And
of
it made
like a fancy science experiment, which is something that
there-
I'd always wished that a distiller would do. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of science here. Well, there's enough science that it's really interesting, and it's good because there's some principles, and if you follow them, generally good things happen. But then
Yeah.
there's a ton of unexpecteds in art as well, and that's the type of thing that's hard to read or even learn. You have to experience that. You have to see it, and it's one of the most fun things about this is when you do these little tweaks, like I've said now, between these three different whiskeys, and it makes a difference, and that's really fun. That's really, really nice.
I
Sorry,
did
Anna,
want
go
to.
on.
No, that's fine. I did want to just
Oh my
touch
God,
on
it's
something.
5 to 6. We haven't. It's 5 to 7. We haven't even talked. Have we talked about anything of any value to you guys yet at all?
Only the last 55 minutes.
Yeah. Phil, again.
Sorry,
you-
Anna's supposed to be doing all of this. I'm supposed to be a second fiddle here.
For some
And
reason,
that's-
I don't think that's the case, Phil. I think that when you're on the virtual tasting, it's your show. So
I'm
think
sorry,
it's-
and
Too excited.
and I'm
I
fine with that.
apologize. I'll
No,
stop talking.
no, this is
You're-
great.
You're letting me have a drink, and I can just look
Yeah.
at the chat. It's great.
Sorry,
No, it's a good tag team. I think we have this working.
doing
I
great.
did
Yeah.
want to.
The problem is that I have to face my wife after this, who's basically the one who's orchestrated all of this. And I'm
Your
gonna
wife
eat
is
it
Sasha?
shit, I can tell you right now. It's not going to be pretty, and it's because I didn't stop talking.
Sasha is your wife, right?
Yeah.
The ultimate
Yes,
goal is
so-
for everybody to have a good time, so it's totally fine.
I
All right,
know
We'll
I'm
vouch
the-
for you.
I know I'm the guy
So
that
I
talks a lot.
started the business because she didn't say no, which is great, and she doesn't always say no, which is really great. But I brought it to a certain level where I had whiskey on the shelf, and then now she runs the business, and I get to do most of the things that I really enjoy, like this, and you know, so yeah. So Sash runs the show, and I'm going to get a lot of shit for basically talking way more than Anna during this.
Well, let me
whole
ask a
podcast.
question. So it's directed. We'll do sort of a Q&A. Could you explain, because we haven't touched on this yet, people might be interested to hear about the story behind the name of Wanderback and your logo, because I think that is kind of a cool story too.
Do you like the logo? I love the
Yeah, it's
logo.
great.
Oh, good. I'm glad you like it. I started this. You know, I started talking to people, and a friend introduced me to somebody who introduced me to somebody. It's like, you know, the way these things happen. And one of the people I got introduced to, this guy Steve Hawley, is an amazing guy. He does he does a ton of work for Westland. Their marketing. He's a really smart, really nice guy. and we really hit it off. I don't see him as much these days, which I'm sorry, but anyways, his firm worked with me to come up with, well, to basically put onto paper our story. And part of the reason I did this, you know, so I like whiskey, but really what I love is, you know, sharing whiskey with my friends, my buddies. You know, like we'd go out and we'd do a thing around, you know, Hood River or wherever we were, and or go on a motorcycle trip. We'd go on these camping trips with our motorcycles or whatever, and then we're camping around the fire at night, and we'd have a whiskey. And that was part of the reason why I wanted to do this, is because I wanted to make a really good whiskey that I would feel good about sharing with my buddies. And so they came up with the word Wanderback. So, you know, it's about part of our thing is about the journey, about meeting people, about going out, working with other distillers and these great places and these wonderful stories. And then coming back and sharing those stories and having a whiskey to show for it. So that's where the name comes from. And the logo is a known orienteering sign, which basically means if you see this on a trail, you're on the right path, you're in the right place. And I think that's quite nice for our logo as well, because yeah, if you're having this whiskey and you're in a place like we are now, you're in the right place. So that's where those things come from.
Awesome. I did want to, since we were talking about maturation before, I think you have to talk about the beautiful barn.
Oh,
in
yeah.
Hood River, and for
Yeah,
as the rick house.
Well, I was talking with one of the people on this call earlier, who had driven through here on her way. I think she was going west, yes, east to west from Pendleton to here. And so this is a beautiful area. It's a very rural area where we are, and a lot of orchards. And so we are on a farm here that used to be a cherry orchard. Now we grow barley for our whiskey, and there's also there's a forest, and there's there were these two wonderful barns, and one of them was totally falling down. I've since just now about to finish replacing it, but the other one was this classic tall red, classic, like what you'd see in a picture barn. So 3 levels, bottom for livestock, top for hay, and the whole front. Basically, these barns, if you ever get the chance to come, we'd love to host you. We don't have a typical tasting room where you can come in all the time, but we make appointments and we have events like we would have a release party for our batch 4 in person, have people here, but that's not an option for us with this wonderful virus that we're dealing with right now. But anyways, the barn was falling down. It's in a valley, and there's like a natural stream, so water coming off of Mount Hood was just basically eroding these barns. And I found these concrete worker guys here in Hood River who were willing to try and save this barn. And I was expecting that the thing was going to fall down in the whole process because basically they had to, come along and anchor to the hill above it and pull this thing up straight, and then like replace the one of the sides, the north side was pretty much gone. And then that, a third of the way back was also just crumbling. But these guys saved it. They built a new foundation underneath it in sections and a great floor. And so then the upper levels were fine. We put a new roof on it, and the wood was not rotten. It was great. So it's a perfect place for aging whiskey, where in the lower level, the basement level, which is about half underground, it acts kind of like a cellar. So you don't get the big swings in temperature. So when we want to slow things down, we put things down there. When things are good, we just want oxygen. We want things to slow down. That's where the casks go. The upper levels are progressively hotter in the warm temperature, and so you get the big swings, and so things happen quickly. They move along, and you got to be careful, especially like finishing the batch 3 and those port things went quickly, and so we use the various levels, and it's a perfect place for aging whiskey. It's not too humid, it's not too dry. We don't lose a bunch to the Angel share, but we lose about 10% a year, maybe slightly less. But if you want to get things moving, like we have these casks that are really tight grain, things were not moving so fast down to the lower level, move them up to the next level, and got the heat last summer. We had a pretty hot summer here, and things are moving along now wonderfully. So we'll watch those, and then we may move them down once things are good. And so, yeah, it's this perfect place for aging whiskey, it turns out. And I didn't know that when I asked for permission to do it, but it turns out it is. It's a nice place for aging whiskey. And our things happen more quickly than they would in Scotland or Ireland because it's warmer. But then we can slow things down. Like we have a winter here where we get maybe a month or two of snow on the ground, and things slow down. We always bottle our whiskey never earlier than the spring. So as the temperature warms up in the spring, and then as you get in the summer, the wood opens up, things start moving in and out of the wood. You get the flavors start to open up, and that's when you want to bottle whiskey. You would never want to bottle whiskey in the wintertime when the wood is closed and the whiskey, it just tastes different. It's not as nice. So yeah, there's a seasonality to this too. That's crazy as well. Is the temperature swings, the heat, it matters. It makes a big difference. Sorry, Anna.
Nope.
You know what?
Don't need to apologize.
Maybe I should sign up. Like it's after
No.
7.
No.
Because you got to talk. You would need to do like a serious tasting where we taste, and I just keep running off about total baloney. And
No.
You're not going anywhere.
This is great.
People
Please
are
don't
falling
leave.
asleep here. They're going to be asleep with their whiskey.
But I will say that they're already drinking batch 4. So I really, really, really want to get into this because I know we're all really excited about it, and I am too. So if you haven't already started, please do.
Since we're on our last one, do you mind exiting the PowerPoint for just a second? We have a customary toast we do on our last pour while everybody still has a little bit in their glass. And I always try to grab a screenshot of everyone. So we want to say cheers to Phil and Anna and Wanderback, and thank you so much for being here, for spending this evening with us. We are excited to try the spirit, and this has been fantastic. So everyone raise a glass to the camera, smile. 1, 2, 3, cheers. Perfect.
Everyone say
Can I
whiskey.
say something?
Let Vadim check it out, and then Coleman will ask you a
beautiful.
question because while Vadim's checking that out.
I'm usually pretty talkative in a group. I just been sitting back. I don't think you have to say anything, Phil. I think your passion is why you talk so much. This is something that you love, and for me, I enjoy that. When somebody's super talkative and they're telling you the nuts and grains of how certain things work, you should never apologize for that. You should always want it. It shows on your face. It shows in your spirits too. Like I clicked off the screen for a family issue, but I was listening, and it just every time you apologize, I'm like, why is this guy apologizing for something he loves? You know what I mean? It's what we
That's
need.
great.
I mean, you love what you do. You love what you do. And Anna's just sitting back, probably just enjoying it. Okay, so next time I have one, I'm gonna bring him on. I can just sit back and relax, and it's good. Like she's probably pulling off points from you because if it was me, I would be doing it. And so I feel like I know I'm just being brutal. Like just for me, I enjoy these are the type of tastings I like when you can stare at the screen and see somebody that really cares about what they're doing, the passion they have in doing. So I think you're doing a great job. Don't apologize for anything. I think you're doing a phenomenal job.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
No,
I don't
second,
want to bore you
sorry
all.
to talk over you, Phil, but I second what Coleman has said. The dynamic, I think that whatever you're putting together is really working. This is something that we know that you just said it, you're not always on these VTs. So we know this is kind of a rare opportunity. I was talking to Vadim privately on the chat going, can you get Phil just one screen because these things are recorded? Because when you have that kind of passion, when you have that kind of knowledge and you talk about the founding, the creation and what's going on in your head about it, that's just so cool. So we really love these things. So this is a great way to spend some time. We have as much as you want to go. And if you want to keep going, I'm not going anywhere.
And Phil, you're not just the founder, you're also the master blender, right? You're the one who creates all these.
Yeah. Yeah, I try and oversee everything. As I said, my wife, Sasha, runs the show. But I'm really trying to play as big a role as I need to make good whiskey. I mean, ultimately, that's the purpose of what we're doing here is we're trying to make a nice tasting spirit for all of you to share. And it's really nice when I hear that people like it. So one of the things, as I was saying, we're making these batches that when they're gone, but there will be a theme. I really like malt whiskey. I think that there are levers that there's so many good levers that you can pull to create some really, really fun tastes. And I think that that's quite unique to malt whiskey. And so you'll see us release things that will taste different, like these 4 batches taste different. But there will be a theme. You know, it's meant to be a balanced whiskey that has some sweet, but definitely some savory and acid and even some smoke sometimes. And that's nice. That's a pleasant thing. And when you have a spirit that has such a depth of flavor, I also think it's nice to hear a story that has some depth as well. We didn't just start this and, you know, follow a recipe and crank it out. There's a story here. Like, there's a real place, and this whiskey tastes good here. We hope it tastes good where you are as well. But yeah, it's a real story. There's real people involved, and we care. We want to make a good product so that it's fun to talk about, you know.
Absolutely. I will let Anna talk because I know she's eager and she's ready to jump in. You don't have to answer it right now, but I want to throw this question out there so it's kind of lingering and we can get to it at some point. I noticed that the batches are all at different proofs and rather random ones. So we got a 90 proof and a 100 proof and a 97 proof. I'm just curious of how you got to those points, of how many iterations you did to get there. But once again, don't have to answer it right away. If we want to do it at the end, we can.
That's an easy. I can answer that pretty quickly, Anna. Sorry again. I want to apologize, but I won't run off for too long. But so it's taste and nose, you know. So when you dilute something, it changes things. It's amazing. It's not like when you add water, you get the same thing but light. It's like you'll get different nose. You'll get different things, and creating something like this and a taste. I mean, taste is subjective, you know, so I like all these whiskeys for different reasons, but I like all of them. And it just made sense to, you know, I think I was touching on the reason why batch 2 could handle that higher proof. It just could, it tasted better. If at the less strong proof, it was too sweet. There was too much of the rum influence, but keeping it strong, there's a bit of that alcohol burn which goes into that, but there are tastes that come through stronger than if it was lighter or more dilute. So yeah, again, subjective, and there's no right answer. It's not like this batch 4 needed to be that proof. That's the only proof. I mean, it could have been many different proofs. The nice thing about whiskey is this is just a starting point. So for you, try it with a bit of water and then maybe more water. And try to use water that's a nice tasting water. Like, you know, water has a smell and a taste. So before you add it to your whiskey, because those things that you put, that the water, whatever's in that water and that taste and smell, that will go into your whiskey. So the reason why I kind of discourage ice is because, you know, typically ice sits in your freezer and it can be next to some things that maybe aren't the best smelling. And that imparts a taste and a smell to your whiskey that, you know, it'd be a shame if you took a nice whiskey and you added something that had fish sticks next to it for a month or so. So that's why. Pay attention to the glass you put it in, the water you add. You know, those things matter. They make a difference. And but anyways, these are just a starting point.
Well, Phil,
Yeah,
one of the
David.
things that you just talked about ice.
Beat me to it.
Yeah, I know. Thank you. So the Los Angeles Bourbon and Whiskey Society is we're very lucky. We have a large format ice maker called Neve Ice. So they do a 2-inch crystal clear block, and they do a 1-inch block. And so I am a strong advocate of really high quality ice. And like a few of us on the society, love high proofs or higher proofs so that we can get it on a big 2-inch, because mine is a 2-inch, square cube. And I get that high proof, and then it just over the time, because it melts so slowly, that you get those flavor profile changes as you kind of drink through it. So we are complete ice nerds.
But you know, the thing is that some whiskeys do well with ice more than others. So, and this is again a subjective thing, bourbon and rye does extremely well with ice, and a slow melting big fat cube works really, 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 really well for, these whiskeys, bourbons and ryes typically are aged in new oak casks that have been heavily charred, lightly toasted typically, but heavily charred for a long time. And typically, like the good ones, I think, are aged in a climate that's pretty warm and humid. And that creates some tastes that, I love. I mean, there's some bourbons that I really, really like, but there's an astringency from those casks, those bourbons, it's quite characteristic of a bourbon. And in my opinion, you add ice to that and it really does some nice things to it. Whereas I think for other whiskeys, and again, this is a matter of taste completely, but in my experience, you take some whiskeys, like a Scotch, for example, particularly a smoky Scotch, and you put a big fat ice cube in there, and it does some funny things to the phenols and the smoky nose and the taste, and it's not for everybody. And I would encourage you, so some people have tried smoky whiskeys and they don't like them at all, but you take that same smoky whiskey and you just make sure that the bottle isn't warm, but just have it neat or with some nice tasting water. And you'll get some of those sweet notes better. It's different. And
I agree. I would never put a Lagavulin 16 on a cube.
Yeah, it just doesn't work as well. You can, and I'm not against it. And it can make some great cocktails too, so.
I know.
But
no, I agree with everything you're saying, Phil.
Okay. Yeah. It's, again, taste is subjective. And I would never want people to leave this thing thinking that there's one way to drink Wanderback. You should drink it however the heck you want to. Right. But I do think that you get some of those sweet, the mouthfeel change, some of those sweet notes you get more when it's not really cold. And I think that's kind of nice. That's a nice way to taste certain whiskeys, but like a nice bourbon on a big fat ice cube, that's amazing, especially on a hot summer day, it's great.
What about the Founders Reserve that's coming out later this month?
Oh my goodness.
Past strength? Is that ice? When I order my bottle and it arrives, I'm wondering how you recommend drinking it. Since we're not having it tonight.
Can Jordan get his signed by Phil?
Jordan, so I tell you right now, Jordan, I'm a little bit reluctant to let any of those bottles leave the distillery. There's 200. There's 205 of them. It's the nicest Anna, this is going to be my last thing. I'm leaving after this comment because, again,
is it a Canadian thing to keep apologizing and saying he's going to defer to you?
It pretty much is.
Sorry.
He's going to apologize for his donuts later.
Everybody drink when he says sorry. No, don't. Just kidding.
It pretty much is. Yeah, this is going to be like a drinking game when Downer says sorry for the night. Anyways,
205? Did you say 205 is what you had?
205 bottles.
Okay, I'm ordering one right now.
I'm telling you, don't. This is a very special whiskey. Don't add it. Just have a nose and a little sip, and then you can add whatever you want. But the first time you try it, don't add anything to it. It's an amazing whiskey. So we have certain casks here. Again, and I'm going after this. I gotta go. But there are certain casks in that distillery that make things better. Like there's two casks, HH10 and HH11, and they probably won't do the same thing forever. But it's amazing what they're ex-bourbon casks. It's amazing what they do to whiskey. And the barrel strength that you can buy now, I think you can buy it now. We just bottled it just recently. It spent time in one of those special casks, and just it started out like batch one, but then it was only aged in ex-bourbon casks. We used a few, but it ended up in this one cask. It's a very special cask, and it just does really nice things to the whiskey. And it's crazy, this whiskey. So this is I guess I can talk about it. If it's for sale, I can talk about it.
It is. It's being shipped on the 16th.
I have two bottles in my. So Phil, I have two bottles in my cart. To Vadim's point, I would love a signature signed bottle. I'll pay for it. I'd love one of the hats. I love the trucker hat that you have on.
Look at this T-shirt. My wife just got these made. A friend of hers helped her wear. This is the combine. I actually have a combine. I harvest the barley myself. I have a combine harvester. One of these ones that tilts. You can tilt it with it's on a hill here. So, anyways, this is the
Hold
combine.
on. Coleman has a question because you're going right down his wheelhouse.
So wait. So if we order stuff, right, and you see our names before it goes, can you sign it and throw like swag in there? That'd be awesome.
I can sign it for you. I think I signed some bottles. I think I put a signature on all those cask strength ones already. But I'll sign whatever you want. Yeah, I'm happy to. Yeah, sure.
So we're just
anyways,
gonna put LA Bourbon and Whiskey Society in the notes.
Out right now.
No.
You just
come on. So Chadwick, Qua. No. He's just gonna have to say on it your name, and then on the other thing, it's gonna say right after your name is gonna say, "Sorry, Anna."
And you'll know for sure.
All right, look, it's 7:15. I gotta go. But listen, it's a real pleasure. We're making it through this crazy time right now, and this little pause from the madness has been a real pleasure. And I'm glad you show interest. I really appreciate it. I hope you like our whiskey that we're selling now, and I hope you like what we're going to sell in the future. And love your feedback. If you're ever in the area, please follow us and come by for a visit. We'd love to host you, and for our release parties, these are getting fun, and we'll do some in the future when this all business gets settled around the world. But have a wonderful weekend, a great Friday evening, and cheers to you all from the farm and Wanderback Whiskey.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Phil.
Tell Sasha said hi.
I will.
I would love to hear from everybody since everyone's gone through 4 already, I hope, but I would love to hear what you guys are getting on this one. Well, now Phil's left. I'm all out of stories. That's pretty much it.
All right, at some point, in the future, Vadim usually kind of cuts off the recording, but I think we're going to record just a little bit more because Anna, you haven't had a chance.
Yeah.
I did see that you added into the chat that there's going to be a $10 off. I'm going to tell you, that's going to make a very little dent in what I got in my cart already.
I completely understand. Same.
So at this point, I'd like to introduce everyone to Anna from Wanderback. She's going to say a few words about the brand.
Hi, everyone.
I got a quick question. So who, obviously, you'll probably know, but the designs on the bottles, is it like a favorite artist? Did he pick them out? Did somebody on the team pick them out? Is it something they see on the city? How did that work?
That's all Sasha, actually. So she works with the designer, and they're all kind of abstracts of kind of natural things around the farm and around the distillery. So I don't recall what batch 1 is, I'm sorry, but batch 2 is actually like tire tread is supposed to be what that is. And batch 3 is based on evergreen trees that surround the area here in the Pacific Northwest and up definitely by Mount Hood. And batch 4, if it has a yellow and white kind of jagged, and that's based on crosscut saw because lumber is such a big thing here in the Pacific Northwest. So there's sort of abstracts of things that are important here.
And the bottle I just ordered, the Founders one, what is that one? What's that after?
Super great question. Let me look. Oh, so that, because it's the logo, I'm not sure actually. Great question. I think it's just the logo, looks like. But yeah, so that and batch 4 are going to be released on October 16th, which we kind of already talked about. So batch 4, I wanted to say this too, because I don't think he mentioned it. You all are the first ones to be able to try this. No one else has had these samples. So that's why I'm really curious to hear your tasting notes.
So we're the first one to sample any of this?
Batch 4.
Yeah, batch 4.
Okay, that's cool. I don't know about, because I barely got into it, but what I've noticed when you nose it out of this and then you let it breathe a little bit, it changes totally. Like it totally changes. Like it's way different. I get a lot on. I was off of the call for a second, but 3 and 2, I feel like I get a smoky but savory, but I also get the sweets in there too, which is nice. Most people in our group know I'm not big on smoke, but you guys have the right amount to where it flows. It's something I would drink.
Mm-hmm.
The last one I'm really into. I don't know what it is. I can't pick out what it is. My palate's not that comprehensive yet, but something in it
Mm-hmm.
that really that speaks to me. I really like 4. I really like 2 a lot too.
Great.
4 says a fruit aisle in Costco. That's what it says.
Oh, is that what it says? Okay, I don't know.
That's why it speaks to you.
I haven't been to work for 2 months, so I don't know what that means.
You miss it. You miss it.
So I would say that even if we taste char in here, which I certainly do on batch 1 and little hints of it elsewhere, the smoke is actually from the pale chocolate malts and maybe even a little bit from the barrels, but there's no peat in any of this, which is kind of surprising. Yes, David?
Anna, have you had the Founders, the cast strength?
Not yet. No.
Have you had any of the cast strength that Phil has put out?
Mm-mm. Just batches 1 through 4.
Founders is the first cast strength, right?
Yes.
So he's hoarding it for himself, basically, what she's saying.
Anna, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got connected to the Wanderback?
Great question.
I'd be happy to. So my whiskey journey started in probably 2015. I fell in love with single malt Scotch. I've traveled to Scotland multiple times, gone on, all the distillery tours, went to Islay, went to Cooperage, learned how to build a barrel, doing all of that because I'm just like you all, I'm super interested in the nerdy details. And then when I came back, I really wanted to learn what we had to offer here in America and specifically Pacific Northwest because we have a lot of great distilleries. And I was still hungry for more knowledge. So I also took a course from the Wine and Spirits Education Trust, a spirit certification. So I learned not just about whiskey, which I already knew quite a bit about, but also about other spirits as well, just so I had a wider base of knowledge. And Wanderback, I had for the first time a couple of years ago, I was at a whiskey or a spirits festival here in Seattle and tried, it was batches 1 and 2, and Phil was there and he was wearing his flannel and his trucker hat and was talking about their concept of, taking the same malt bill and trying it out with different distilleries. I'm like, that's so cool. No one else is doing that. And I would, love to try that sort of thing. So it's been really fun to follow along. And so I joined the team. And so I'm a virtual brand ambassador in order to.
And when did you join the team?
This week. So
that explains a lot. Okay, sorry.
So thanks for humoring me. But it's something.
Okay, so Vadim, are we going to stop recording anytime soon?
Whenever you want. I think we're still dropping knowledge bombs, but you tell me.
Oh no, I'm gonna go down that little rabbit hole.
I'm gonna pause it. You want to pause it?
You can pause it.
Yeah, I'll pause it.
It seems like.
I'll give you a reprieve. Go ahead.
So I mean, really, all I wanted to finish up was just to talk about batch 4 a little bit. But I think everyone's glasses are probably dry, right? So, yeah, I have a little bit left.
I'm more interested to hear about. I mean, batch 4 is amazing, and don't get me wrong, but Wanderback has a very interesting place in the kind of the whiskey fabric, right? Because you're not an independent bottler, because you're not buying casks. You're not per se sourcing like Pinhook. You're not just buying sourced whiskey and calling it a day.
Blending.
But it's not even just blending. They're custom ordering White Dog. So it's kind of like MGP, but then aging it themselves. But it's not, MGP just buys whatever, like brands that source from MGP just buy whatever MGP makes. And correct me if I'm wrong, Wanderback actually places an order with Westland or whoever, but they say exactly what they want.
It's a little more collaborative than that. So, so what Phil did, and are you familiar with Westland also?
Very.
Huge fans. We got them coming up very soon.
Well, we have so real quick, Anna. One of in the very beginning stages is John Debney still here? Yes, he is. Thank you, John Debney. So he is one of the founders. We call him Bruce Wayne because he has a beautiful house in the hills of Burbank. We think he's secretly Batman. He won't admit to it, but we think he is. But we had a Westland tasting event where the global brand ambassador was there, all the national reps were there, and we tasted through all their expressions. And this was the second in-person tasting that we had from Westland. So we're huge fans, and they do an amazing job. So we're intimately familiar. In the beginning stages of the society, we're very intimately familiar, particularly the founding members.
I'm glad to hear that, because I mean, it's great whiskey. There's so much great whiskey here. So Phil worked directly with Matt Hoffman to create the mash bill, and was there during the distillation process and everything. So it was more than just placing an order. It was definitely a more collaborative effort. So Phil also worked with, since we already said Balcones, worked with Balcones directly to kind of tweak the mash bill a little bit and everything, and then brings the whiskey back to Hood River to mature. So that's how that functions. Does that really answer your question a little more, Vadim? It's a unique approach that no one else is doing. It's pretty cool.
So Vadim, you were asking, which I think that Anna just said, is that they're creating the mash bill, they're distilling it, for example, at Balcones or Westland, and they're taking that distillate, so once they distill it, they're sending it to you unbarreled. It's not in a barrel. After
I would
Westland
assume they
or
would put it
Balcones.
in. I mean, you got to transfer it in something. So they probably put it in the
So
barrels
it's going to be in a
of
tote.
Wanderback's choosing.
Or
I
it
would
could be
say.
a tote too.
I'm thinking
I
it's
don't
a
know.
tote, and then they take the barrels, and then Phil or whoever is going to say, "Am I going to put it in an ex bourbon, an ex sherry, ex Alarosa?"
They all start New American Oak. They all start there. But that's actually a question I want to ask. I'd imagine tote, because that's way easier to deal with than a whole bunch of barrels. But for the, because it's like a 4 to 5 hour drive from Seattle to Hood River. So, and certainly further from Balcones and other places. So, that's where it's a different kind of collaboration that no one else is doing.
And you don't know that after being there a week? Jeez.
I know.
Lazy?
Such a slacker.
Just kidding.
Are there other questions? I've already talked about, we have the release parties coming up. There's the hyper local kind of collaborations that we're working on. There's another one, because he kind of talked about it, that we're growing barley at the farm and distilling that with another distillery, and then maturing that and going to release that as a special.
So Phil has no plans to distill himself?
Not currently. I think he really particularly likes this model. I think it was maybe in the plans early on that they would create, get some stills and everything, but this is such a unique and interesting way. And he really likes working with everybody else. It's a great way to learn, learn a lot of different, not even just techniques, but like everything behind all of this. So I think because he's that collaborative spirit, he really wants to keep doing that. So we're going to keep doing that. Yeah.
It's working. It's great.
Yeah.
Kwa, you had a question.
Yes. One of my favorite things about young malt is like the lemony fruitiness and maltiness from just the distillate itself. And I feel like that you guys put it in New American Oak, it kind of doesn't kill it, but I mean, I'm tasting batch 1 right now, so I'm getting a little bit of the fruit and the lemony flavors. But are there any plans to just do like an ex bourbon to preserve that, the exquisiteness of the distillate itself?
Ooh,
They're done
really
with the Westland distillate, right? Batch 4 is the last one.
So. Yeah, so the cask strength, that one is Westland. So technically it's like 5 different releases, but yeah, we're done with Westland after this. That's a great question. I do wish Phil could answer that one, but I think the model of having everything be in New American Oak is kind of the base, because it adds so much to the character. And I know what you mean about overwhelming things. That's something that I like about Scotch, that it doesn't get that super heavy oak flavor kind of going over it, but there's a nice balance to it, that it's not quite so much. And you're right, that batch 4, because there's a lot of the ex bourbon, that leaves that open for some of those lighter fruits to come through. So I don't think we have plans for that, to answer your question.
I mean, these are all very good, but it's just, I feel like the wood kind of overtakes the distillate itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm tasting the more of the barrel influence versus the malt influence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say too that is such a big focus is the barrel as well. But it's a good point, and it comes down to personal taste. And I don't know about you all, but one thing that I find too, because we have a different mash bill, because we have the Munich malt, the crystal malt, and the pale chocolate malt in addition to the pale, it kind of can stand up a little bit better to some of that new oak flavor that can, be really strong. That's my own.
But
Yes.
you got to channel your inner Phil when you say that. You got to say sorry, and then continue.
Anna, what is the production?
A boot.
What's the production quantities of these things when you're working with Westland and you're barreling in Hood River and you're getting things from Balcones? Are you guys going to be boutique, or are you going to be in the grocery stores and the liquor stores down in Southern California, or is this something much more limited?
I think it's definitely going to be more boutique. I'm not sure of the range exactly just because of the limited quantities. Because I know there's probably, I'm trying to think of the size of the stills, but there's sort of like, these batches we did, there's like 3 runs. So it's in total or something like that. So it's not a huge amount, and maybe that might just be for one batch. I'm trying to recall, but there's not a huge amount left. So that's why it's when they're gone, they're gone. We really don't have a lot. Great question though. So I should find out the answer to that. I'm not sure.
Because we have a lot of us have relationships with people, large liquor stores, large grocery stores. So do we look to them? Do we talk to them to say, hey, we tried this. It's really cool. They have a great story. Why don't you try and start adding the SKU? But if the production is not going to be there, then it's not worth the question, and that's fine. Because if we know when we were introduced to it, and I have a full cart and on the website, I'll try it out. I'll see how I like it. Is it going to be something I'm going to try to add to my portfolio? I don't know, but right now, I'm really very impressed with it.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think my own liquor store that I go to here has batch 2, but not anything else. So it's kind of a hit or miss.
So unless you know Vadim, you're really not going to be introduced to it. So thank you, Vadim.
Yeah, I actually like it. I think it's intimate. I enjoy it. Keep it that way. I'm being an a-hole right now, but yeah,
he's always very selfish.
like David said, it's in my portfolio now. So yeah.
Is he gonna ask for a barrel soon?
Oh, no, the last 4 I haven't asked, so that's you kill that one right there.
Coleman, how many barrels do you actually have in your backyard?
Right now I have 2 in my garage right now.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Are those filled barrels?
No, so I actually work at Costco, so I'm redoing my backyard, and my goal in my backyard is to make it. There's a buddy of mine back east who has his bourbon theme, so I want my bourbon theme. Like he has some things, and so I kind of want to copy it, but my own thing. And so I'm not gonna say the company's name. Costco had a single barrel program with this company, and I was trying to get the barrel and trying to get it. And one morning I came in, my boss was like, "Well, go to your car," and he brought it with a forklift and stuck it in my car, and then shut the door. I was like, "Oh, it's yours." And then a buddy of mine happened to get another barrel and brought it over and threw it in the garage. So yeah, I kind of want 4, and I'll do some things, like I want to do some chairs and some things, But yeah, but everybody's joke is I've asked a bunch of people. The last one I asked was the guy was actually it was Irish. It was the last guy I asked, only because it was part of their city. That's the reason why I asked for it. But no, I haven't asked for one since. So stop it. I will ask for one at the one company. So I'm not gonna say the name, but you know which one I'm gonna ask for.
Coleman, we've been missing that question. It's been like a week and a half.
It's gonna come up. It's gonna come up in 2 more tastings, and everybody better have my back on that one.
Oh, we got your back, buddy.
That one right there, that got me into the game. So you better.
Oh man, that's cross country, buddy. You're gonna have to pay.
Put it like this: JP got his, and that's the only barrel he would not give to me.
A little bit of WP is what I'm hearing.
That's right.
The little oink oink.
Did everybody vote already? We got 10 out of 14.
Oh, no, I didn't.
Vote for your favorite.
It's hard.
And then we'll let Anna go, because if she wants to get on to her Friday night, we don't want to keep her and hold on while we start, talking and harassing.
We got 12 out of 14.
Sorry,
well, I'm on,
I
and I'm
voted
also
too,
on
so
hand.
I voted on the last two. Sorry.
I do want to say, if you do want to keep up to date on our other releases, you can certainly sign up for our mailing list if you want to. So I'm putting that link in the chat.
Do you have you have an IG account, or does Phil have one?
Yeah, so there's Wanderback. I do have my own, which is a little separate, but I do have it that I also talk about whiskey. So Wanderback, let me just double check.
Mm-hmm.
So
You want to throw that into the chat, before you head out?
Yeah,
we
totally.
appreciate it, because we've really had a lot of good time. I got to tell you that we thoroughly enjoy the fact that there's a lot of women into the industry and that they're here and they're talking about it. We really appreciate the palette and the knowledge. So it's we welcome that if you want to kind of post something like that, we'd be happy to follow.
Yeah. Oh, thanks.
And Fernando's missing out on this one.
Forget that guy.
Yeah, forget that guy.
Let's not have a conversation with her.
Yeah, no.
So
yeah.
what is the next tasting you have? I'm just curious. This is just me asking because I'm curious.
Are you talking about the next
Glen
one or
Wine.
the next 10 or the next 20?
Are you talking about the barrel one that I want? Is that the one you're talking about?
There's
here,
too many. There's too many coming up.
Let's do this. I want to thank Wanderback for being here. Thank you to the Los Angeles Bourbon and Whiskey Society for this awesome evening. This has been fantastic. It was great to learn about the very unique process of a Wanderback and taste their delicious whiskey. And on that note, I'm going to stop this recording and thank you very much. Cheers to Phil and cheers to Anna.